Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of One Piece a Day. Today is another update video, and I know that I've been pretty infrequent with these, but sometimes there's not a lot to talk about. And as my last video entailed, we will have multiple talking points to go through for One Piece a Day going forward, and therefore it gives quite a bit of structure to how these videos go, as well as sort of makes it clear how much to divulge in an update video, as well as how frequent these update videos will be. So to go over those dot points for what we'll be doing for pretty much every One Piece a Day going forward, unless I add more to these or if I rewrite the structure at some point. But how it is going forward right now, every episode I'll be talking about an update of where I am right now, my favourite character of the series, favourite arc so far, favourite villain, things I don't like about One Piece, overall thoughts and experience with the series so far, and favourite fights, favourite moments, things like that. So to start things off, as you can probably tell from the name of this video, because I think it's going to be another one of those clickbaity videos, I am now 250 chapters deep into the series. As of recording this video, I'm not 250, but by the time the video releases, it will be 250, but I'm close enough as is. I've just started the Skypiea arc, which means that the last time we did a video, I'm pretty sure I was still in Alabasta, and I was sort of in the process of wrapping Alabasta up, and since then I've done Jakku, and now started Skypiea. Now for sort of general thoughts on Alabasta, that was definitely the longest arc we've seen so far, but was also the best arc we've seen so far. There was so much going on, no time really felt wasted. Like sometimes it felt like a little bit long, but every chapter for the most part progressed the story in some way or helped fill us in on something that was going on. So I have no problems with that. The Jakku arc, I guess that we'll get into that a little bit later. I didn't quite like it so much. If you follow me on Twitter and see my live tweets, you can see that I was really not feeling it for that arc. And Skypiea, it's a little bit hit and miss so far. I am very, very early on in it, but it sways between chapters that don't feel important right now, but definitely seem like they're hinting at something important later, as well as massive info dumps of information that is important at that moment, but we can tell that will be way more important like further into the future. But yeah, that's roughly where I am right now. The specific moment as of recording this video, the crew has been split up in Skypiea, and Luffy, Usopp, and Sanji are looking for the rest of the crew, which are stuck on the Going Merry. Now, my favourite character so far, I can't really remember who I said in the last one. I think that it was a toss-up between Nami or Chopper, because they had interesting moments and interesting character development. And so far in the Skypiea arc, Nami's had quite a bit of screen time, but throughout all of Alabasta and Jakku, Chopper hasn't had much. He's been used more like a punchline for the most part. He's had a couple fights, but they aren't really like that interesting. But he's almost being used more like a punchline than he is an actual character. Whereas Nami's fights in Alabasta and her moments throughout have been more pivotal and more important. They've really been building her character quite well. And they've really hit it home for like what's important to her. I mean, even in the Skypiea early on, they said that rankings of things that are most important was life, then money, then everything else. So I don't know who my favorite character is now. I do like Zoro quite a bit. He is getting a lot more development and a lot more moments to shine, but he is still being used as a joke when he's not needed. Like, he'll be cool in fights and pivotal moments or interesting moments, like when they're exploring Jakku and Luffy and Zoro take a beating from the entire town, but they both resist. Like, that's a strong character moment for them. But I don't know if that's really a character moment for Zoro so much as it is a crew building moment. So I guess that my opinion of favorite character will still probably rest on either Nami or Luffy, because Luffy is very lovable for what he is. He hasn't had a whole lot of development, but it doesn't really matter. You are getting more of a clear sense of him as a captain, though, like between Jakku and Skypiea, especially Jakku, he was sort of taking charge of a lot of the moments in it, even if I didn't like the arc that much. Favorite arc so far, pretty clearly Alabasta. Close second would be Along Park, because that was also a very, very good arc, and that's where One Piece really started becoming One Piece. So yeah, I would say Alabasta is probably the best arc. It had the most going on in it. It's kind of hard for it not to be the best arc so far, because it was definitely the culmination of everything that had happened so far in the narrative. So I don't see any reason why it couldn't be the best. Had action, had story, had intrigue, had a great villain, had strong character moments for everyone, had great side characters, really interesting fruit powers, really good world building. So I don't think that there was any way that wasn't going to be good. Also, should have said it in the update earlier, that now Nico Robin is part of the crew, and she is a very interesting character and a very strong character, but she hasn't had any moment to shine. She's just sort of been there and hinted at her importance. I do know that she gets stuff later, and I think it's relatively soon in the grand scheme of One Piece, but for the time being she's just sort of there. But it is cool that they've got another crew member. Favorite villain, Crocodile, easy. He's the best villain of the best arc so far. He was a powerful villain in terms of strength and skill and things like that, but he was also very intelligent in the way that he played everyone against each other to create the perfect situation for him, in a political sense and sort of power sense, for Alabasta to happen. Like, without Crocodile, that arc would not have been nearly as strong. And I'm saying that more that you would, if you replaced Crocodile with another villain that was just the sort of conniving side, it wouldn't have been nearly as good as a conniving and strong character, or just a strong character at the top. He was both, and that really, really made it special. He was a complete opposite to most other characters for fighting and abilities. He's strong in his own right, but still plays to his advantages. And the way they had to fight him was interesting. So yeah, easily he is the strongest villain of the series so far, and a definite standout in a series with really, really outrageous and crazy villains and just general characters. Now, things I don't like about the series. I don't like the sort of in-between moments of arcs. And I understand that there is no way to sort of jump straight to the next island or jump straight to the next arc. That can't be done. That's a very obvious thing. This is just critique over something that has existed for over 20 years. It's just that sometimes those in-between moments just aren't interesting. And after Alabasta finished, which the epilogue lasted just a tiny bit longer than I think it should have, but had a strong epilogue nonetheless, and a strong moment right at the end with Vivi, I think that Jakku itself was pretty boring, I felt, but the lead up to Jakku was also boring, because I did not care about the diving monkey pirate crew guys at the start. I cared about them at the end a little bit, but generally I did not care about them. It felt like filler. It was built like filler. I didn't really care much about it. Jakku, for half of it, I just did not care. Bellamy seemed interesting. I did like that he got one-shotted by Luffy when Luffy actually got serious, but it felt like it was just filler. And that's what I don't like about One Piece. Sometimes you'll get a bit of fluff between arcs, and that doesn't mean that fluff's bad or anything like that. And you can have really, really good fluff in between. But when it feels like it doesn't serve any purpose, it's just awkward. And that's what Jakku felt like to me. Agree, disagree with me, it doesn't matter. That's just my opinion at this moment. And that's a general complaint, well, not complaint, it's a general criticism of the franchise, that it has high highs, but it has these sort of awkward middling lows, and it's not really bad, it just doesn't feel like it gels perfectly well with the rest of the narrative. It is a grand adventure and things like that, and it does help world building and everything like that, but it just feels a bit awkward. Favorite fight of the series? I did choose, I think it was Zoro versus all of Whiskey Peak in the previous video. Since then, we've had all of the fights in Alabasta, which there have been some amazing ones in there. Pretty much all of Luffy's fights versus Crocodile were really cool, especially the water Luffy one. It seemed goofy, but it is actually very cool. The finale to the Crocodile and Luffy fight at the end of Alabasta was like a very strong moment. And that's probably going to, the actual final hit of that fight probably would stick with me a lot more than any of the other fights so far. But I would probably say, I'd still probably say Whiskey Peak is my favorite fight overall. But most important fight was definitely like the Crocodile and Luffy final fight. Special mention to Luffy versus Bellamy, because Bellamy seemed like an interesting character, has a really interesting fruit power, and could have worked really well as a counter to Luffy, or a match to Luffy. But Luffy just one-punches him, and that was actually surprisingly satisfying. I like that moment. It's really good. But favourite fight, it'd be Whiskey Peak and Crocodile. It's sort of neck and neck. I do also like Zoro versus Mr. One. That was an interesting fight, and it was really cool capped off, even though it was cool but stupid, which is something that I think One Piece sort of balances very carefully, because it's like Zoro trying to get stronger, trying to cut steel, and you're like, oh, this is so cool. Trying to remember what his master taught him, but not really taught him. And Zoro just not understanding the lesson at all, but still somehow achieving this enlightenment and being able to cut steel. So it was a really cool fight, but also really stupid. But I like that. So I'd say most fights with Zoro are pretty damn good. And overall thoughts of the series so far. It is a very good ride. I can see why I dropped off around this point in the anime. Not necessarily because of the 4Kids dub, but the 4Kids dub did definitely impact that quite a bit. I think it has a lot to do with pacing and how I said the fluff of Jakku and stuff like that, and the early parts of Skypiea. As a kid, if you don't have the patience for it, it's very easy to drop off, because you want to get to the best moments of every arc, and this stuff is just not the best parts. It's building something, but you can feel like it, if you're a kid watching it, it's not delivering the stuff that made you really like One Piece initially. So that's my general thought of the franchise. It's sort of inconsistent with pace, and I'm sure that fixes over time, because basically anyone that I ever talk to doesn't have a bad thing to say about One Piece, besides the 4Kids stuff. But generally it is still a fantastic ride. Well written, well drawn, well realized, an absolutely outlandish, insane world. Sometimes you want them to spend more time on things, but there's just not enough time in this sort of arc or this general time frame to spend an eternity explaining things. So when they do get an opportunity to explain things, it's always sort of mid-journey or in the middle of a fight and things like that, and when it needs to be said immediately. But they all, like Oda, always tries to have everything tie into something else or be important for something later. So I don't think he really forgets any major details, not like other mangakas like Araki or anything like that. Everything Oda does is very deliberate, and it's very deliberate to the world building of One Piece and the structure of One Piece and the structure of this grand journey that's all pointing to this one point, and you don't know when they're going to get there, but you do know they're going to get there. So I think it's a very interesting series because of that. Everything feels deliberate, nothing feels wasted. But you do think that sometimes when they are doing some of the smaller bits, it feels wasted, but it also sort of feels like everything is necessary for something else. Like, I am sure we'll see Bellamy again. I'm sure we're going to see mentions of what happened in Jakku again. It's not going to be wasted. But in that moment, it felt a bit odd if you're not reading in between the lines. I hope what I'm saying makes sense. But my overall thoughts on the franchise is that it's a little inconsistent, but overall pretty damn amazing. And that's what's important, that I am constantly engaged. Sometimes I'd like to read ahead more because there's a cliffhanger. Sometimes I'd like to read ahead more because the arc is boring me. But never has it made me stop the franchise altogether and put it down and go, no, I'm not doing this. So I think that it's definitely deserving of the sort of pedigree that it has. Having read 250 chapters, that's roughly 5 years of the manga. Like, this is when Oda has definitely hit his stride. He knows what he's doing. He's probably got it all planned out in his head at this point. Knows roughly where we're going, what's going to happen, what the crew members are going to be, and things like that. And, you know, in another 20 years of manga, I'll be up to date. But yeah, it's an interesting grand journey, and once it's really became One Piece during the Alabasta arc, I think that everyone knew if they were going to stick with it or not, and I definitely knew if I was going to stick with it, and I'm pretty happy to continue on my way. Hopefully by the time I catch up, it will be finished. I don't know about that. We've got 2.8 years left before I catch up, so we'll see what happens. But anyway, as always, thank you for watching the video. Thanks for keeping up with my journey with this franchise. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss another one of these One Piece videos. I will be doing a lot more content on this channel, not necessarily One Piece related. Some of it will be. Some of it will be more figurine related, model kits, things like that. I still need to do my crazy unboxing of the figures from my giant unboxing months back. But that's neither here nor there. Stay tuned for the next One Piece update, which will most likely be chapter 300. I think it might be better doing 50 chapter chunks unless something massively pivotal happens in the manga, or something happens to the way that I'm reading it or anything like that. So far, I don't think there's going to be any way that I change my approach to reading it. So I think these updates will be every 50 chapters because that's enough content to really talk about for updates and thoughts and feelings on the franchise. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.